You were chosen for a moment like this, where betrayal stops feeling abstract and starts feeling expensive. What hurt you did not vanish into the air. It left a mark, and now you are being asked to look at that mark without flinching. You know the weight of this in ordinary places, like the kitchen sink, where you kept washing the same cup, while your mind kept returning to the same face. You hear the small sound of water, the scrape of porcelain, the hum of the refrigerator, and all of it feels too normal for something that cuts so deep. Your chest has carried the answer before your mouth found words for it. Your shoulders have learned the shape of disappointment, and your hands have held themselves tighter than usual, as if the body could guard what trust has tried to protect. There is no need to pretend that betrayal is small just because you survived it. What was done to you may have looked hidden in the moment, but hidden things do not stay hidden forever, and conscience has a way of collecting its own receipts. You are not imagining the difference between what was promised and what was delivered. You are feeling the distance between honor and convenience, between a loyal heart and a borrowed mask. C.S. Lewis knew that human beings can treat honor lightly and then act shocked when treachery appears in the room. The old mistake is to think that broken trust is only pain, when it is also revelation. This is why your unease has not been pointless. It has been a witness, and it has been teaching you to stop calling every smile safe. You have been learning that the soul knows when the story has changed, even before the facts are fully named. That kind of knowing is quiet, but it is not weak. It can feel like standing in a hallway at night, one hand on the doorframe, hearing footsteps that do not match the voice that once reassured you. The air is still, the house is still, and yet your spirit has already noticed what your hope kept trying to excuse. If even one of these words has settled in you, type 888 in the comments and then come back to me. Let that be your small agreement, your honest way of saying that something here has found you. The number is not magic. It is a simple sign that you are no longer pretending the wound was nothing. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Type 888, then return, because the next part is for the one who is ready to name what was real. You may have thought betrayal would only hurt the moment it happened, but some acts keep speaking long after the person has walked away. What was taken from you keeps asking to be seen, and that is part of why your heart has not settled. Think of a desk lamp left burning in a quiet room, a notebook open beside it, and your own reflection faint in the dark window. The light is small, but it reaches far enough to show what was missed before. Your breathing changes when you remember it, and the body tells the truth before the mind finishes building its defense. There is a tightening under the ribs, a pause in the throat, a stillness in the hands that says, "I knew this mattered more than I wanted to admit." That is where discernment begins to speak louder than denial. It may be that God is not only allowing you to see the betrayal, but also showing you how deeply He values the part of you that was handed over without care. The tension is that the old voice says you should move on quickly and not disturb the peace. The newer truth says peace built on pretending is not peace at all. So you do not need to minimize what happened in order to remain gracious. You only need to tell the truth in your own heart, because truth is where healing starts to stand upright. There is a cost to pretending that every wound is already finished. There is also a cost to carrying it alone, as if silence were the same thing as strength. You may notice how the memory returns in waves, not because you are weak, but because your soul knows there is unfinished business in the light. That unfinished place is not punishment. It is a doorway. You were not betrayed because you were careless with your heart alone. Sometimes a loyal heart simply stands too near someone who chose to become smaller than their promise. There is a difference between being wise and becoming hardened. Wisdom learns to read the room. Hardness stops believing any room can be safe. You can feel that difference in your own body when you sit at the edge of the bed at night and stare at the phone without opening it. The screen glows, the room stays dim, and your pulse keeps asking the question your mouth has not yet said. What happened to you is being weighed more seriously than you were told. Not every consequence appears at once, but a false act always begins to gather its own burden. You are not being asked to revenge yourself. You are being asked to let truth do what drama never can. The people who betrayed you may have thought the moment was theirs to control. But moments have a memory, and what is done in darkness often returns wearing the face of consequence. So do not be startled when the ache becomes clarity. The ache is the first rough edge of a door opening. When you look back, you may see that some doors were closed, not to shame you, but to keep you from becoming someone who could no longer hear wisdom. That is what protection sometimes sounds like before it is understood. There is a table, a chair, and a half-finished meal in the background of your mind, and even that ordinary scene feels interrupted by what was said and what was not said. Betrayal changes the room without moving the furniture. You may have called it confusion, but confusion is often the first language of a conscience that refuses to lie. It is the soul standing still while the mind tries to keep walking. If that unsettled feeling has been following you, rite in the comments and come back to me. Say it in the language of recognition, because what is seen can no longer be denied. Write those words as a witness to yourself, not as a performance for anyone else. The point is not to impress the room. The point is to admit that the room has changed. You are entering the part where the hidden thing starts to move. It does not move because you forced it. It moves because truth, once named, refuses to stay buried. What they did may have seemed to give them control, but control built on betrayal always carries a crack in its foundation. That crack becomes visible at the exact moment they thought no one would notice. Picture a staircase lit by a single bulb, each step carrying the echo of a footfall that returned too many times in your memory. You keep climbing, but you also keep feeling where the floor once gave way. Your body remembers the lesson in ways your spirit can use. The shoulders drop, then tense. The breath shortens, then deepens. The eyes grow tired of watching for the next disappointment. This is why the metaphor matters now, because what has been happening to your trust is like a house settling after a storm. The walls still stand, but the sound of the settling tells you something in the structure has already changed. God may be exposing the fracture not to terrify you, but to free you from confusing appearance with integrity. What looked stable was not always solid, and what looked sudden was often long prepared. The tension is that betrayal likes to present itself as a one-time event, a clean cut, a finished chapter. In reality, it leaves a trail that continues to speak, especially to the one who was harmed. You do not need to chase the person who caused the crack. You only need to stop calling a crack a foundation. That is the line you carry now. What is false cannot stay weight-bearing forever. The load will tell the truth. Even if you are still polite, still quiet, still careful with your words, something inside you has already become less willing to kneel before appearances. That is not bitterness, it is the beginning of discernment. There are nights when the ceiling seems too near and the room feels too small for the thoughts you have been carrying. In those moments, the old story says you should just endure it. But endurance is not the same as agreement. The new story says that God can take the place where you were wounded and begin to build a wiser floor there. It may not look like comfort at first, but it is steadier than denial. You can tell the metaphor has moved when the house in your mind is no longer only a place of loss, but also a place of sorting. Some things are being removed, some things are being revealed, and some things are being kept for a reason you do not yet see. The pain of betrayal once tried to name you by what was taken. Now the deeper truth is naming you by what remains. So keep listening, because the next movement is not about their power. It is about the weight that power has already started to carry. Sometimes betrayal feels like a stone dropped into still water, and the first splash is all you can see. But the circles keep widening after the sound is gone, and that is where consequence begins to speak. You have seen those circles in your own life, maybe in the way a conversation went cold, or in the way a room no longer welcomed the same voice. A small object on the counter, a folded towel on a chair, a missed call that never came back, all of it can become part of the evidence. Your body reacts before your theology catches up. There is a tightening behind the eyes, a slower swallow, a reluctance to trust the next explanation that sounds too neat. That is why this is not merely about what the other person did. It is about what their choice awakened in you, and what God is now using that awakening to expose. The old interpretation says you should get over it because time passes. The new interpretation says time does not erase moral weight. It only reveals what was already there. If you have been wondering why the memory returns when you thought you had buried it, it may be because buried truth still has gravity. It pulls, and it asks to be faced. You are not failing because the wound still matters. You are maturing because you finally know it matters. A betrayal always contains an attempt to rewrite the value of your trust. When that rewrite fails, the truth comes back heavier than before. There is a chair pulled slightly away from the table in your mind, and it tells you something important about distance. Some people leave not only your life, but the center of their own accountability. Do not mistake the silence that follows for innocence. Silence can be a delay, and delay can be a mercy that gives truth time to stand up. What is being revealed now is not that you are too sensitive, but that your sensitivity was protecting you before your reason could catch the scent. Lewis spoke as though longing itself were evidence, and here your longing for honesty becomes evidence too. You may still feel the urge to excuse what happened because you do not want to become hard. But mercy without truth is not mercy. It is confusion wearing a gentle face. So let the weight remain where it belongs. Do not carry their guilt as if it were your calling. A room can look the same after betrayal, but it never sounds the same again. The refrigerator hum, the faucet drip, the movement of your own breathing all begin to testify. That testimony matters because consequence does not always arrive as collapse. Sometimes it arrives as exposure. What was hidden starts becoming difficult to hide. You are not seeing punishment first. You are seeing truth first, and truth is often the first mercy that judgment wears. So when you feel the stir of accountability in the atmosphere around what happened, do not rush to explain it away. Stay present long enough to learn what it is showing you. There is a slow seriousness moving through this story, and it is not cruel. It is exact. The hand that once reached across a table with a false promise does not escape the memory of the table. Every place betrayal entered becomes a place where truth may also return. You know this in the body when your stomach drops before your mind has finished naming why. That drop is not superstition, it is the nervous system recognizing the shape of danger. What you endured is now being sorted by a wisdom larger than your wound. That sorting may be painful, but it is not random. The old way was to believe that the loudest person owned the story. The new way is to let time, conscience, and God speak together. If the betrayal has been circling your mind like a room you cannot leave, then you are already near the threshold where the door starts to open. Keep your posture steady. There is still more to see, and what comes next will ask you to stay honest without becoming consumed. That is how the weight is carried rightly. At some point, the story of betrayal stops being only about what was done to you and starts becoming about what is being rebuilt in you. That change is not loud, but it is real. You may notice it in the way you now pause before answering a message, or in the way you read tone more carefully than you used to. A screen lit on a dark couch, a thumb hovering, a silence waiting. All of it becomes part of the new literacy of your heart. Your shoulders have learned to listen before your mouth speaks. Even your sleep has changed because the body remembers without asking permission. That does not mean you are trapped there. It means your inner world has been paying attention, and that attention is now becoming discernment. The tension is that betrayal often tries to turn discernment into suspicion. But suspicion sees everything as threat, while discernment sees clearly enough to choose what is true. What is being formed in you now may be quieter than the drama that broke you, but quieter things often last longer. A strong wall is built one careful stone at a time. You were not made to live forever inside the aftermath. You were made to learn from it, without being defined by it. There is a moment in every long night when the lamp on the desk feels less like a decoration and more like a witness. It stays on, steady and unembarrassed, showing the papers, the cup, the uneven stack of things you meant to handle tomorrow. That lamp is what your conscience is doing now. It is refusing to let darkness keep the final word. If you have felt yourself returning to what was taken, to what was said, to what was hidden, it is because your soul is trying to reclaim its own record. The record matters. Write "Esto pronto" in the comments and come back to me if this is where you are standing now. Those words do not mean you have finished healing. They mean you are ready to stop hiding from the truth. Write them because readiness is different from comfort, and you do not need comfort before you can tell the truth. You only need honesty. When you return, stay with the fact that healing often begins not in applause, but in naming. A name given to a wound changes its authority. This is the place where the house of your inner life begins to change shape. The same room, the same objects, the same memories, but a different atmosphere fills them. What betrayed you may still be remembered, but it no longer governs the whole map. That is the turning. You are learning to let the old interpretation die without pretending it never mattered. That kind of death makes space for wisdom. The one who betrayed you may have imagined that your silence meant surrender. Sometimes silence only means you were gathering enough truth to stand. There are hidden costs to falsehood, and they do not always become visible to the person who benefits most from them. But they do become visible. You can already sense how the old story is losing its grip. That loosening feels strange, because even pain can become familiar, and familiar pain resists release. Yet release is what is beginning. A hand unclenches, a breath deepens, and the heart learns that alertness is not the same as captivity. There is a way in which betrayal can become a cruel teacher if you let it define your future, but it can also become a stern mercy if it teaches you where truth must be welcomed next time. The difference is whether you let the wound become your identity or your instruction. One traps you, the other trains you. You may still be in the room where it happened, but you are no longer the same person standing in it. That is why the air feels different. The cost of ignoring this would be to keep calling instability by softer names. The cost of receiving it is honesty, and honesty is a harder gift than denial. Still, it is the gift that frees you. The floor is being checked under your feet, and you are finally allowed to notice where it was weak. What once felt like a collapse may become in time a correction. That is not a cheap answer. It is the way wisdom works. So keep your lamp on, keep your heart open, and keep your feet on the truth that is being revealed. The next stretch of this path asks you to recognize the justice of God without turning it into vengeance. You are not asked to celebrate anyone's downfall. You are asked to trust that the moral order is not blind. That trust begins small, but it matters more than it looks. It is the seed of peace after betrayal. There comes a point where you stop asking why the wound happened and start asking what truth it exposed. That is not because the wound was good, but because revelation can still be good inside a bad event. You may notice the shift while standing at a sink, drying your hands on a rough towel, staring at the pattern on the tiles as if it could answer for you. The ordinary room holds the question without solving it. Your body still wants certainty, but certainty is not always given in the form you expected. Sometimes it comes as a steadying of the breath, a calmer spine, a refusal to panic when old memories knock. That quiet steadiness may be the first sign that God is not only seeing the betrayal, but also weighting it rightly. Weight is not always punishment. Sometimes it is the seriousness of truth. The old interpretation says that if someone got away with it for a while, then the story is over. The newer truth says hidden things continue to move under the surface until they are exposed. There is a difference between delay and denial. Delay can be mercy. Denial is only blindness. You have lived long enough inside this ache to know the difference in your own pulse. Your body stiffens at lies and softens when something finally rings true. That is why the story cannot stay shallow now. You need more than a slogan. You need a way of seeing that can hold both grief and justice. If your mind keeps returning to the same scene, it may be because the scene has not yet been fully interpreted. Once truth enters, the same scene can become a witness instead of a wound. You do not have to force the matter. You only have to refuse the lie that betrayal has no echo. There is an echo in every hallway where trust was broken, every driveway where a goodbye felt colder than it should, every room where you kept trying to believe the better version of what was happening. Echoes are not enemies. They are reminders. What is being revealed now is that your pain was never too small for God to register. It was being measured. The world often rewards appearances and ignores depth, but heaven does not confuse the two. You may be tempted to look only for visible consequences, yet some of the heaviest weights are internal, and they press on the betrayer in ways outsiders cannot see. Conscience can be a hard room to escape. That is why you are being told to stay honest rather than bitter. Bitterness wants to become a throne. Honesty wants to become a doorway. You are not entering someone else's punishment. You are entering your own clarity. That clarity is worth more than the illusion of immediate payback. So breathe slowly. Let the facts settle where they belong. The next movement is about what your life becomes when the old wound no longer gets to write the whole script. That future begins as a quieter present. A burden that has been named no longer has to disguise itself as normal. It can be held, examined, and placed where it belongs. You may feel that shift today in a bus seat, in a parked car, or at the edge of a church bench after everyone else has stood up. The place is ordinary. The realization is not. Your fingers may twist together in your lap, or your jaw may ease without your permission. The body often tells the story of surrender before the mind agrees to it. That surrender is not defeat. It is the release that happens when you stop resisting the truth that has already been arriving. What betrays you does not get to define your future unless you keep giving it the first word. The first word now belongs to discernment. There is a tension in that because the heart wants closure and the soul wants integrity. Closure without integrity is only a lid. You are being guided toward something sturdier than closure. You are being guided toward right seeing. The old voice says you should keep the matter small so you can move on quickly. The wiser voice says smallness is how many wounds stay untreated. You may not be able to explain every detail yet, but you can explain the direction. The direction is toward truth. That direction changes the way you remember the person who wounded you. They are no longer the center of the room, only a part of the room's history. History matters, but it does not have the power to imprison you when God begins to speak over it. That is the mercy hidden inside exposure. If you are noticing more peace mixed with the pain, do not rush to judge yourself for it. Peace can arrive in fragments before it arrives in fullness. There is wisdom in the fragment. It teaches you how to breathe again. You may still be careful, and you should be. Wisdom is not the same as cynicism. The difference is that wisdom still believes truth can be found, while cynicism assumes all doors are false. You are not being asked to become cynical. You are being asked to become clear. Clear enough to tell what was real, what was borrowed, and what must never be handed over again. The clarity is costly because it changes how you love, how you wait, and how you trust. But it also changes how you live. The person who betrayed you may have expected you to remain trapped in the same emotional room forever. Instead, the room is opening and light is moving across the floor. Keep going. The story is becoming less about the injury and more about the shape of your recovery. There is a moment when betrayal stops being the loudest thing in the room and becomes one more thing God has already measured. That moment is not dramatic. It is steady. You may see it in a small act of routine, like making coffee while the dawn is still grey and the spoon taps the mug in a quiet rhythm. The kitchen is ordinary, but your heart is not exactly where it was yesterday. Your thoughts still return to what happened, yet they do not return with the same authority. Something in you has begun to stand back and observe rather than drown. That standing back is not detachment from life. It is the first sign that your soul is refusing to be ruled by betrayal alone. The tension is that pain wants to occupy every seat in the house. Truth only needs one seat to begin. What God is doing may be less visible than what the betrayer imagined, but it is deeper. Invisible work often lasts longer than public noise. The old assumption says justice must look loud to be real. The new understanding says justice can also be patient, exact, and quiet. You know this in your own breathing now. The breath that once caught in your throat is learning to complete itself. That matters because your body is not just carrying memory, it is also carrying permission to recover. Recovery begins when the system stops expecting the next wound to arrive at the same door. The person who hurt you may still be living inside their own explanation, but explanations do not erase consequence. There is a weight to betraying a trusted heart, and that weight travels further than the betrayer first understands. It follows their choices, their silences, their sleeplessness, their need to keep looking over their shoulder at the truth. You do not need to invent what you cannot yet see. You only need to trust that hidden things are not forgotten by God. That trust does not make you passive. It makes you unshaken in the right places. You become less available to manipulation when you stop worshipping the appearance of peace. Real peace can withstand the truth. There is a chair by the window, a low evening light. and your own face reflected faintly in the glass, older in one sense and steadier in another. You are not who you were before the wound. That is not loss only. It is also formation. Some betrayals do not just wound trust. They expose the places where trust needed strengthening. That exposure can feel humiliating until you realize it is also protective. You are being taught to honor your own discernment. The next time, you will not be easier to fool. And that is a kind of mercy too. The wound, once rightly seen, stops being a cage and becomes a boundary. So do not rush the lesson away. Stay long enough to receive the wisdom hidden inside the ache. The final stretch of this path is not about how much they owe you. It is about how fully your life is being returned to you. There is a deeper peace forming now. Not the shallow kind that ignores what happened, but the kind that can look directly at it and remain standing. That peace begins when you stop carrying what was never yours. You may feel it in the way you now set a cup down more carefully, or in the way you leave a room without turning back as of attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.